Good afternoon, Spurs fans, and welcome to the very first Hotspur live stream of the 2026-2027 campaign. And I got to be honest with you, I'm buzzing. After a summer transfer window where, not to be hyperbolic, as being a Spurs fan that has been around for 25 years, this has to be the best summer transfer window under Enoch. And of course, it laid the groundwork for today as Spurs kick off with, let's be perfectly honest, a lot of quality in today's starting 11. And listen, be excited, be happy, because you know what, this is the type of campaign where without European football, we actually can dare to do. It's in the mission statement, if you will. Dare to do, dare to dream, because it's going to be one of those type of campaigns without European football, and with the type of manager that Roberto De Zerbi is, we can actually, dare to dream a little bit. All right, so. With this London derby, we travel to the Gtech to take on Brentford, and let me just tell you, there is a little concern with today's starting 11, and we're going to get into that as well too. And of course, quickly, news and notes a little bit. Spurs have finalized the deal for Savinho. The bad news is he's not going to be available today. And of course, we probably should have some clarity on Cody Gakpo and Omar Mamouche as the week continues. So you're looking at next week before we actually start seeing some of these newcomers get embedded into the first team. But that being said, we will see Sandro Tonali today. We will see Marco Senesi. We will see Jan-Paul Van Hecke today. And of course, we're going to be seeing Big Tony Kinski getting his first opportunity in net today as the regular first-timer. Let me just say that I am absolutely through the roof for this one, because at the end of the day, this is exactly what Spurs fans were looking for. To see that bravery, not only on the pitch, but also in the executive boardroom as well too. And we absolutely hit one out of the park this summer. Before I begin, please do me a favor and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell. And if you are tuning in on TikTok Live, number one, thank you very much. But also number two, the link is in the description, so you guys can head on over to YouTube and show the channel some love. Let's go ahead and take a look at today's starting 11. We begin with the home side, and of course that is Brentford. This is your match day 18 by head coach Keith Andrews. And in net today will be Kelleher. Your back four will be Coyote off the right. You have Keane Lewis Potter off the left, and your center back pairing will be Azure and Collins. And of course, Collins will be wearing the captain's armband for Brentford. Your midfield pair will be Sangare and Janelt. Your midfield three will be Kevin Schott off the left. You have Otara off the right. Jensen will be underneath at that attacking midfield position, and up top will be Igor Thiago. And of course, Spurs fans, I can understand the nervousness considering that they absolutely dummied Eintracht Frankfurt 7-0, but you also have to understand that, number one, it's preseason. You can't really read too much into it. And number two, it's Eintracht Frankfurt, essentially what I would consider a mid-table Bundesliga team. Off the bench, you're going to have Valdemarsson. You're going to have Hickey, Henry, Pinnock, Yarmouk, Wilson, Anthony, Damsgaard, and Schuster. And make no mistake that this is a very good Brentford side that actually can do very good things while they're on the ball. And of course, I think it begins with Kevin Schott. He has absolutely stepped into a massive role for that Brentford side. And, you're starting to see the evolution of what Kevin Schott is actually going to be moving forward. But of course, the guy that is responsible for scoring goals is going to be Igor Thiago, fresh off a World Cup appearance this summer. And I think Igor Thiago has kind of stepped in to not only that role with Brentford, but also has made a name for himself as a striker in the Premier League. He's got the size, the strength, and he's also got that finishing touch, almost which would you classify as having a class touch. And he's certainly somebody that you're going to have to keep, essentially keep your wits about if you're Tottenham Hotspur. Speaking of our beloved Tottenham Hotspur, let's go ahead and take a look at the way Roberto De Zerbi has put out his starting 11. And of course, Spurs will be lining up in a 4-2-3-1. And in net today, let me tell you, man, big Tony Kinski. And here's what I will say. Number one, it's been absolutely deserved. But the thing I love about Tony Kinski is he easily could have faded into the background and been, essentially a non-entity for Spurs, especially when you consider the way he came in. He was thrown to the fire. He had some good moments, but he also had a lot of bad moments. And of course, last year in the Champions League against Atletico, he easily could have shrank. But Roberto De Zerbi did the right thing. He put his arm around his shoulder and said, "Hey, listen, you're my goalkeeper. You're the guy." And let me tell you, when you have a manager that has that type of belief in a player, all that does is breed confidence. And of course, the things that Kinski does well. He is absolutely calm, and he's very cool with the ball at his feet. He's not nervy like Vicario, but also he's very strong when it comes to set pieces, and he's very good on his line. You never see Kinski be out of position. He takes good paths to the ball. He's an excellent shot stopper, and he certainly deserved the opportunity to be Spurs number one this season. The back line will start with Archie Gray off the left. And of course, Big Archie is going to be wearing the captain's armband today. Of course, this is also news that Mickey Van de Ven has been made permanent captain for the season. I know a lot of Spurs fans are a little hot and cold when it comes to VDV, but that being said, for today, Archie Gray will be wearing the captain's armband. Off the left side, you're going to have Big Andy Robertson, who is going to get the starting nod off the left side, and that is absolutely the right call. And the thing about this is, we are wondering whether or not what is left in the take with Robertson, considering he played under Jurgen Klopp, and the requirements to compete in a Jurgen Klopp system. You're starting to wonder whether or not there's anything left really in the tank. But that being said, he is a short-term answer at the left back position. But the things that he does well, not only getting forward, but his ability on the ball to play balls into the box is going to be a net positive for this team. But it's also the link-up play with Matisse Tell off the left that is going to pay dividends. And one of the things that it does do is it does give cover for Destiny Udogie to not only make sure he's 100%, but it's also he can get acclimated to what Roberto De Zerbi asks from a left wing back. And so from that standpoint, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of Andy Robertson this season. The center back pairing is going to be Jan-Paul Van Hecke off the right, and of course, Marco Senesi off the left. And listen, this is a very, very solid and quality center back pairing. And I love the fact that we finally do have depth at that left center back position, something we haven't had in quite some time. Your midfield pairing is going to be Sandro Tonali and Lucas Bergvall. And this is interesting, too, because I didn't have Lucas Bergvall in my starting 11. I felt like if Mateus Fernandes was going to be a part of the matchday squad, that we probably would see Fernandes. But listen, credit to Roberto De Zerbi. He is, he's making sure that Fernandes is going to be 100%. So Lucas Bergvall steps into today's starting 11, and we'll see exactly how that's going to pay dividends. Our attacking forward today, Conor Gallagher will be at the 10. And I called this one as well, too. And it just seems like Roberto De Zerbi is slow rolling James Maddison, making sure he's 100%. I have no problem with that. Conor Gallagher can step in and do a job. And so we'll see exactly how that's going to play out. Off the right-hand side will be young Mikey Moore, fresh off a double against Hoffenheim, where he looked absolutely fantastic. Granted, it was Hoffenheim, so we have to have a little context with that. But his loan move has been put on hold until we actually get Savinho through the door and into this attacking four. Matisse Tell will be off the left, and listen, I love Matisse Tell, and we clearly have seen the improvement from Matisse Tell, and it looks like he's finally ready to attack this Premier League, because the same thing applies with Antonin Kinski, same thing with Matisse Tell. It looks like Roberto De Zerbi has put an arm around his shoulder and let him know that he is that guy, and he has nothing but faith in his abilities. And so from that standpoint, that does wonders for young players. And Matisse Tell just looks like he's playing with a lot of confidence. And then up top today will be Richarlison. And listen, I like this. And Richarlison, he is an early season merchant, if you will. He always seems to start the season off very hot. And so from that standpoint, you kind of looking at his body of work in the preseason, he looks like he's ready to go. Off the bench for Spurs will be Martin Dubravka, obviously the backup keeper. You have Kevin Danso. You have James Maddison. who I would assume we're going to get some minutes today. Same thing with Destiny Udogie. Mateus Fernandez is in the match day squad, and I would probably assume we'll probably see him at some point today. Same thing with Dominic Solanke, Rodrigo Betancourt, and then of course it's going to be Ben Davis and Luca Williams-Barnett. So that is your match day squad for our beloved Spurs. And listen, I was this morning. I was on Irish Hotspur. We didn't necessarily get to our picks for today, but I will say that Spurs will win this one 3-1. I have a feeling that Igor Thiago will probably score early for Brentford. But as Spurs get into that first half, I can see Richarlison equalizing. I see Richarlison scoring again early in the second half to Spurs take the lead, and then my guy Matisse Tell will put Brentford to the sword as Spurs will win this one 3-1. But before we actually kick off this match, we do actually have to talk about goals, because it was something that a lot of fans were looking to address. Because me personally, I was one of those guys that felt straight away that we needed to at least invest in 30 goals across the attacking three at a bare minimum. And I've already made my feelings known about Savinho. He just doesn't have enough end product where that is going to facilitate it, even 10 goals off the left side. That being said, what we have in-house, it's going to be interesting to see exactly the way that Mikey Moore attacks. Same thing with Matisse Tell. One of the things that we cannot do today is get ourselves in a position where we're one-sided, where, as we saw toward the end of last season as well too, where Matisse Tell was essentially doubled off that left-hand side and put in a position where he's going to have to make magic happen. We're going to have to throw different dimensions of attack at Brentford today. And so from that standpoint, what we saw in the preseason, especially with that midfield diamond, this is where Sandro Tonali is going to come in and play an absolute big role, because he's the guy that is going to essentially initiate things for Spurs. And when you see opponents try to box out our midfield pairing, this is where Tonali comes in huge, because he's absolutely brilliant under pressure. He doesn't get rattled. And so with the ball at the feet, he's calm, cool, and collected, and he's going to be able to start and initiate our attack through central areas. And of course, it's short passing, it's progressive balls through the mid, it's also balls over the top as well too. And so from that standpoint, we're going to have I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities 1v1 in certain scenarios in this game. And so from that standpoint, he is going to be my click to pick. I think it's going to start and end with Sandro Tonali. But whether we are switching, whether we playing balls down the right, we're going to have to show Brentford multiple looks. And it just cannot be, okay, cool, we're just going to play it down the left-hand side and Matisse Tell, you work your magic. It can't be that, because we're not going to score that many goals. And so it's going to be imperative for Roberto De Zerbi to make sure that these players understand that we're going to have to show them different looks, and we're going to absolutely have to involve Mikey Moore. We're going to have to obviously involve Matisse Tell, and Richarlison is going to have to be able to put away the chances that he's going to be able to get. So from that standpoint, I think that today is going to be fine. But the overall concept of this season, we're going to have to figure out a way to get at least 30 goals from the striker position if we're going to have any chance at European play. Not only do we have to stay healthy, that kind of goes without saying, but we're going to have, this is going to be a season where we're going to have to see career years from certain people. And it starts for me with Dominic Solanke. If we get Omar Mamouche, I think that's going to be a net positive, because at that stage you can rotate the striker position depending on opponent. You can keep certain guys fresh. But it also goes for the wing position too, because we're not we don't know when we're going to get Mohamed Kudus or Dejan Kulusevski back. Although De Zerbi did do a very good job of letting reporters know that he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But at that same token, we're going to have to see end product from Savinho if he's going to be starting on the right side to begin his Spurs career, and Matisse Tell as well too. It's going to have to be essentially a commutative effort to score goals. But with the way that De Zerbi likes to attack, I certainly believe that we are going to get that as well too. So just to let you guys know that the chat is definitely open. And let me know how you guys see this one going down, as it looks like we have kicked off here at Brentford, as Brentford now is on the ball as this ball gets cleared off the left-hand side. Here's Robbo as they're playing 1-2s with Robertson as that ball gets cleared down. But Brentford will hold this one in their attacking end, as it's going to be Janssen who's going to dribble forward down the right-hand side, as Otara will have to play this one back. As Gallagher tries to get that turnover. Here's Kevin Schade off the left side, being marked by Archie Gray and Van Hecke. Tries to dribble forward, and I believe there's going to be a whistle here against Schade, as this looks like a whistle for Schade, as it looks like Brentford will actually have the first set piece 2 minutes into the first half, as it looks like Jan-Paul Van Hecke clipped the outside leg of Kevin Schade. So first opportunity here for this Spurs defense, as it looks like Jensen, it looks like he's going to be taking this free kick here for Brentford. As today's referee will be Michael Oliver. In the VAR booth will be John Brooks. Spurs are going to be in their away, their away purple, as this ball is going to get played in. Ooh. As it looks like Robbo was there to deflect this one. Away for Spurs. Good defense there by Robbo as he clears it past the near post, but it will get out for a corner, as it looks like Jensen will be taking this one as well too. I want to welcome in a name I can't pronounce because it looks like it's Asian. Greetings from Sky. Good afternoon. Spurs, with the improved quality, as this ball is going to get whipped in, as that will be taken from outside the box, and Spurs do a very good job of defending this one, but Brentford will try to hold this one in. Here's Kevin Schade trying to get on the ball. Not a good touch, as Bergvall will lose control. There's going to be a shot. Ooh. As it looked like Collins was in there unmarked, but he puts one just wide of the near post. So all of a sudden, just a couple minutes in, and Spurs are having trouble clearing it. Clearly, Lucas Bergvall gets his back pocket picked, and Brentford nearly made Spurs pay right there. But I do like the tenacity in defenses, and I like the way that this team defended right there, as Richarlison nearly gets it taken away, but good calm on the ball, as this one will go back to Robertson, and he's going to have to play this one back. Senesi back to Big Tony Kinski, and Spurs now will try to reset here. And it's going to be Mr. Van Hecke, as it looks like Brentford is really doing a solid job in their press, because there's another turnover in the mid. As that ball progresses forward, here's Kevin Schade. Schade trying to dribble through a couple defenders, but that ball does ricochet away, but Brentford is is holding this ball quite nicely. Here's Schade now, as he's going to try to dribble forward past Bergvall. As that's good defending right there by Bergvall. Schade tried to hit the deck to try to draw a penalty. No dice, says the referee. So this looks like it'll be a goal kick for Spurs. And it looks like Spurs might be a little nervy, as I'm sure they were expecting Brentford to come out two guns a-blazing, but it looks like Spurs are doing a very, very good job of trying to stay calm under pressure. And certainly pressure is what Brentford is doing, as that's a nice little flick on by Matisse Tell as he tries to play it from behind. He tried to play it ahead to himself. Not exactly great right there, as Brentford is easily going to get that ball back. And now it'll be Collins walking this ball forward, as Gallagher will break off to try to defend. As this one goes back to Kelleher. Interesting way to start this season with a London derby. Good test for Spurs right out of the gate as this ball is going to go long. And right there is big Tony Kinski to play it forward. But again, Brentford will control this one with Azure playing it back to Collins. Here's Azure. And Spurs will immediately try to put him under pressure. That's a nice little play right there by Conor Gallagher as he disrupts that pass. And he's currently holding his ankle like he got shot. But that's exactly what you want to see from this Spurs press here. But it looks like Gallagher is up. There's VDV, Poro, and Xavi. Looks like there's Mo Kudus as well, too. As play restarts with Brentford in possession. That's a good ball forward here. As Jensen will play it off to that left-hand side. As Archie Gray gets beat. As that ball that goes into the box was nearly kicked away by Van Hecke, but it goes right through the 6-yard box and out of play. And again, Archie Gray commits a little too far forward and then gets beat off the edge right there. As this ball goes in, as Van Hecke was able to redirect it, so this will get out for another corner. As Balls Life says, "Hey, Gramps." No, man, it's Unk. As this ball will get whipped in, as it goes all the way back, it gets headed forward and out of play. So it'll be a Spurs. It'll be a Spurs goal kick. Where is Hunmin Song in my all-time Spurs player rankings? Probably third or fourth. In my lifetime, I would probably have Harry Kane and Gareth Bale 1, 2. Sonny's probably 3. As this ball will get headed forward and redirected right back to Brentford, as this one will get popped in. Janssen does a very good job of playing it as Robbo tried to head it forward as this one gets out of play. So it looks like it'll be a Brentford throw-in off the right side. And let's see. Balls like Brentford has dominated possession. Well, that's an understatement. I don't think Spurs have 15 seconds on the ball yet. As this one gets played back to Azure. As Brentford will play it now to the right side. As Brentford it just seems very calm and cool on the ball. They seem to be doing everything right, as this one looks like it got past Otara right there. And there is a whistle. And it's going to be offsides. Let's see. RDZ is Thomas Frank 2.0. I think you're absolutely deluded, sir. Thomas Frank is the most conservative, pragmatic, afraid to attack manager I think I've ever seen. And Roberto De Zerbi is the complete opposite. There's a ball that's going to get forward. Here's Gallagher. And instead of playing it off to Mikey Moore off the right, he takes a rip, and that goes far, far, far. Wide right. But good ball movement right there between Richarlison and Matisse Tell to open up Conor Gallagher. He had a runner too. And Gallagher decides to take a rip. Let's see. The last time Spurs made this many marquee signings, they sold Bale. I wouldn't even say then as well too, because I think it was Lamella and Christian Eriksen. That was pretty much it of the 7-8 guys they brought in. As Kinski now will flip this one over, taken away by Shada, and Archie Gray just didn't do much right there. As Gray's got to close that down and try to play for the ball. As Gray will try to play this forward, it looks like he's going to be fouled on the play. As Archie's wearing the captain's armband today, I think I'm all right with that. But as the captain, you're going to have to do the little things today. As Speaking of possession, it looks like Brentford's got 67% at the current moment. 4 shot to Spurs 1. I would agree with that. Lamela was a major disappointment, as this one was trying to get progressed forward, but here comes Brentford yet again. As Spurs just need to calm down, as they've been under duress for the first 10 minutes whenever they've been on the ball, and Spurs just need to do the little things that made them look halfway decent in the preseason. And it just looks like right now everything is just being disrupted as this ball will make its way forward. Here's Jensen, and he will lay this one off. Ball immediately goes out to the right, as Matisse Tell will get into the space to try to cover it, as Bergvall tried to dispossess, but Brentford's doing a very good job here. As this one will get into the box. That was absolute good movement, and Brentford just scores. What an absolute beautiful sequence of passing that freed up Keane Lewis-Potter to be able to put that one in. And I called it. I absolutely called this one. I knew Brentford was going to score early. As Keane Lewis-Potter puts Brentford up 1-0, 12 minutes into the first half. And Adam, absolutely, this was not going to be an easy game whatsoever. I actually had Brentford scoring early because it just felt like that was 100%. And by the way, that was 100% given. As we see this one again, as Keane Lewis-Potter, and it was Archie Gray that lost the mark. As this defense left Keane Lewis-Potter and Antonin Kinski Potter wide open, Kinski hanging out to dry right there. As Spurs are going to have to do a better job here of man marking. As 12 minutes in, Brentford will take the lead, but I called this one, and I thought Brentford was going to take the early lead. And as Spurs kind of grow into this first half, I figured that by the end of the first half, Spurs will equalize and then take control of the game. But here comes Spurs. And that's good defense right there by Brentford, as Coyote boxed out Conor Gallagher from getting around the corner. So this will be a goal kick. As look at that. Yeah, Mohamedou Sangare was purchased from Lens for $55 million. He was the League One Player of the Year for Lens, as this ball will go deep. Spurs will get this one back. Here's Bergvall. He's got Tell. Here's Bergvall. Tries to play it forward. Finds Richarlison. Here's Richie. And there's going to be a whistle, as it looks like this might go against Sangare. So this will be Spurs' first, I guess you can say, set piece of the afternoon, as it's in a dangerous position here. As Richarlison works a nice little free kick, and it looked like it was Sangare who got his foot in there. How do you have 7 injuries already? Some are from last season, but why? Well, Porro's not injured. He's not fit yet, coming back from the World Cup. And that's the same with VDB as well, too. But, yeah, some of these guys are, with Kudus, Xavi, with Kulusevski, yeah, they were holdovers from last season when it comes to injury. So we have Matisse Tell and Andy Robertson sitting above this ball here. 14 minutes in. And here's Tell. Tries to rip one. It looks like it's going to take a deflection. But Kelleher had no problem. As play resumes here, here's Keane Lewis-Potter. That's too many names. Plus, never trust a man with a hyphen in his last name. As this ball will progress forward, Ishada will pop this one straight in. As Senesi goes 1v1 against Thiago. As Archie Gray now will be on the ball. Here's Gray. Here's Sandro. Nice little flick right there. And it looks like it's going to be a penalty. A whistle here. It looks like it's going to be against Jensen. As play resumes here, here's Van Hecke. As Van Hecke will play it forward, Richarlison will flick it. There's just nobody there in the mid. As Sangare will play it back to Kelleher. So through the first 15 minutes, Spurs really just have not been precise, not in their passing. As Senesi will have to play this one out, so this will be a throw-in. As it just looks like they haven't been able to deal with Brentford's pressure through the first 15 minutes. As we have the Gobbler here on TikTok who says, "Go Philly." Looks like we have a Union fan. And, of course, I'm sure you're happy with the signing of Mark McKenzie, the continued development of one Kevin Sullivan. Curious to know how you felt about that dust-up with Miami where Kevin gets slapped by Messi. Wasn't a big fan of that. Dejan will be back sooner rather than later. He's already back first team training. So Dejan will be back, and I can't wait, man. Kulusevski is going to be such a huge addition to this to the starting 11. As play resumes, as Kinski will play this long, as Brentford just seems to be in the right place. Spurs cannot win these 50-50 balls. As Brentford has just dominated the run of play. That's an errant pass. Matisse Tell will play this back to big Tony Kinski. Nice play right there by Jan Paul. Plays it forward. Here's Archie Gray. Playing it to Moore. Here's Mikey. And it looks like there's going to be a whistle, and it looks like this thing is going against Tonali as he was mobbed by two defenders. He's a reporter for the Union. Okay. There you go, man. Listen, man, get at me on my DMs if you want to come on and we can talk a little bit about Philly. So do that, Gobbler. Get into my DMs. Would love to talk about the Union. As play resumes, as this ball will go to the right here. As that comes down, pop straight up, header. Oh, off the crossbar. Oh, and Spurs were lucky that Thiago missed that header. And again, Spurs are leaving men unmarked. As it looks like they're going to say this was offside to begin with anyway. But again, oh yeah, for sure. Home dude was offside. As Collins was on the edge of the box right there. As play resumes. As Senesi is going to be fouled again, this time by Jensen. Jensen has kind of been a little bit of a pest today for Spurs. As Kinski will come out here to take this free kick. As we are 19 minutes into the first half and Spurs have yet to get any type of attacking rhythm here. As it's been all Brentford in this first half. As Kinski will play this long, Richarlison will give it no challenge. This one goes out, so Robbo will play it in quick. Here's Senesi. As Jan Paul. As Bergvall dribbles into traffic, and now Senesi's going to have to play this one up. I think it's last touch by Matisse Tell, so this one will go out yet again. By the way, Brentford already has 7 touches in the opposition box to Spurs 0. As this one is a little too far forward as big Tony Kinski will come out to grab it. 29 passes into the final third for Brentford so far. And there is good old-fashioned Vinny contention, but look who's there right below him. It looks like it's Peter Crouch. There's a no foul on Tonali as he was absolutely mugged. Unbelievable. That should have been a foul right there. But that's taken away by Spurs as Senesi goes down. And I think this is going to go against Sangare as well, too. as Senesi did a good job of poking that one away. And then it was just a clear takeaway. I think they're going to say this one was against what, Richarlison? Good Lord. As Spurs just do not have an answer at the moment. As Shada will still come away with that redirection. As Brentford plays this straight up. Good ball in. Nice defensive play right there by Marco Senesi to make sure that Big Tony Kinski was able to get at that ball. But again, Brentford, good solid pass into the box. As Spurs literally just cannot contain possession here, as Brentford has just dominated the mid, as Kelleher will play this forward. As this one will trickle back to Big Tony Kinski, as he will chip this one out. Here's Robbo. Robbo's got open space here. Why did you pass it back, homie? Here's Bergvall. Back to Robbo. As Tonali will have to play this one back to Senesi. Here's Sandro. Good ball forward. Has Robbo off the left wing. Tries to play it forward. Will take a redirection off against Kabore. Spurs will have the throw in. Here's Sandro. Tonali switches off to the right. Here's Mikey Moore. Tries to head it forward, and Spurs will lose possession as Gallagher couldn't do much, but that's a great tackle. Spurs will get it back. As that pass to Matisse Tell doesn't find the end, doesn't find him. Instead of actually playing the ball and trying to win it back, well, he does. Here's Tell. Here's Tonali. Off to Bergvall on the left. Here's Robbo. Bergvall, ball in. Oh, as that goes over the head of Richarlison. That's the first real attacking sequence Spurs have had here in the first half. 23 minutes in, as Bergvall overshoots Richarlison. Looks like Graham Potter. As Van Hecke will head it forward. It falls to Matisse Tell. Here comes Spurs now. Off the left side, it's Tell. As they lay it off to Robbo, here's Bergvall. Here's Tell. Marked by 2. Bergvall drops it off to Tonali. Here's Van Hecke. Over to Mikey Moore on the right-hand side. Moore. As Brentford's doing a very good job. That's a good... As Van Hecke tried to play one forward to Mikey Moore. Just far too forward for him. As we were pushing the 25-minute mark here in the first half, Brentford does lead 1-0. These are not an easy opening fixture for Spurs, I would agree. Let's see, Klinsmann guy. Am I a Klinsmann guy? I'm kind of lukewarm on Jurgen. As Brentford again will have possession here as this one gets played back to Kelleher. That's a good turnover right there. As there's a whistle, though, and I think they're going to say this one was against Matisse Tell. I think, I don't know, man. Klinsmann did a lot of good things for the national team. The thing about Bruce Arena is he had multiple failures as head coach, and he did have a very successful World Cup in 2002, but the failure of 2006, and then, of course, being in charge of the national team when we failed to qualify. Unfortunately, that's going to be the legacy. Klinsmann had a good 14 World Cup. He had a very good Copa America in 2016. And I think he was, I don't know, I think he was pushed out the door. Me personally, I'm a big Bob Bradley guy. And of course, I'm a huge Pochettino guy. But as play restarts, that's a nice little pass right there from Kinski. Here's Senesi. He's going to try to play one forward. Just into an area nobody was there. So again, Brentford will continue to dominate possession here. As I wouldn't be surprised if we were going to see some halftime changes here. Something is going to have to give. And it's, we really haven't seen our attacking three get into the game. But that being said, I could see some halftime changes here as Brentford again is in the box. It's going to be Thiago who's going to have to lay this one back. As this ball will go in, headed down. But again, Brentford will control. Here's Azure, plays it forward. Here's what it looks like. Otara is going to have to play this one back. And ultimately, Brentford will relinquish space as they have to play this all the way back. That allows Spurs to get into their defensive shape here. Here's Azure trying to play it forward. That's a good ball. Does find Thiago. And there's going to be a whistle against Marco Senesi here. Do I regret Poch benching Lucas Moura in the final after the hat trick? A little bit, because there was a way where you could still play Lucas Moura and Harry Kane together. But you weren't like if Harry Kane was ready to come back, you're going to play Harry Kane. You're not going to not play him. But that being said, it's like in that situation, I still probably would have started Lucas Moura. So Brentford here will have the free kick, and it will be Jensen taking this one as we are pushing the 29th minute here in the first half. Brentford leads as this ball gets whipped in, as that one will go wide of the left side post here. Good delivery in again. Just was not on target. Spurs they haven't gotten acclimated to the pressure of Brentford. Like they have had their foot on the gas the entire first half here. Here's Robbo trying to play one forward. Tell's trying to get around the corner as this one will go out. No, I mean, I would have started Kane as well too, but I guess my front three would probably be Sonny on the left, Moura on the right, and Kane through the middle. It would have been interesting to see a rotation of, Christian Eriksen and Dele at that 10 position. I wouldn't have started Christian Eriksen as this ball gets forward. Conor Gallagher will win that ball, and there's going to be a whistle. Here's Archie. Oh, Archie. As Spurs now will be in their attacking end. Here's Sandro. Here's Archie Gray. And Gray will immediately play it back. As Spurs will try to switch sides here. Here's Robbo. Sandro will play it forward. Good flick. Ball in. Good defense right there by Azure. And that ball will get deflected as you're starting to see that nice ball progression through the central areas And of course, it starts with Tonali. He played a good ball forward. It was flicked on. It was flicked aside. And as that ball was starting to progress forward, it takes a deflection. But that is that midfield diamond that Roberto De Zerbi loves to play. As this ball gets flicked on forward, here's Thiago. Tries to play it forward. He's got a man wide open. Right there was Big Tony. Here's Matisse Tell. And Tell can't complete the pass to Richarlison. So here comes Brentford again. And Brentford is absolutely quick in transition here. Everything is just smooth about Brentford. Don't get me started on PGMOL-FC. As that ball goes forward. I'm glad PSG dummied Arsenal. As it looks like, I think they're going to say this one was, could have been ruled offside, but here's Tony Kinski. Richarlison. As that ball gets taken away again from Bergvall. There's a shot. Oh, Big Tony Kinski. Oh, off the rebound, and Brentford scores again. As Janalt puts this one back, as Senesi tried to clear it. Initially a good save by Tony Kinski, but Senesi couldn't clear it as that ball gets taken away in the 6-yard box, and that was an easy finish for Brentford. As now it's 2-0. As, again, that's the second turnover from Lucas Bergvall in this first half. The first time nearly resulted in a goal. This one, Spurs get punished as Lucas just loses possession so easily. Kinski did a very good job on the initial shot, but Janalt absolutely takes it away from Senesi as he couldn't clear it. This one is 95. The shirt's 95, so you're talking Ginola. I would agree with that, Adam. The only manager having a worse week is Carrick. Yeah, losing to Hull City on the opening week. Yeah, that was pretty bad. As there's going to be a whistle against Gallagher here. And it's going to be a yellow card. So as we are getting close to the end of the first half, I'm expecting wholesale changes to this Spurs side because something's going to have to give. We're going to have to be able to mount some sort of attack here. And that means, unfortunately, that Lucas Bergvall is going to have to come off. And quite frankly, Conor Gallagher is going to have to come off as well, too. As Archie Gray nearly coughed it up right there. As last year, Spurs conceded 57 goals last year, which is the most by any non-relegated club, which is absolutely horrible. But again, the name of this season is number one, health. We can't afford another injury crisis. But number two is consistent goal scoring. That was one of the issues that I had with the Savinho purchase because there's just no end product. That's a good pull forward. As again, Lucas Bergvall tried to flick it on. It was just a straight up giveaway, and that's his third giveaway here in the first half. What I will say is when Porro and VDV come back into this 11, we will have an absolute solid defensive back four. But the reality is, at least with Marmoush, I think Marmoush is a very good squad player. And I think he will pay dividends. But Savinho, I just don't rate Savinho whatsoever. And I have questions about whether or not he is going to be able to provide the necessary goal production that is absolutely needed. And I think Spurs wasted a lot of time in this transfer window trying to get some guy that they've been wanting for a year now. when there were other attacking options out there that made far more sense. Like personally, if we end up with Cody Gakpo, that'll actually pay dividends because we absolutely know Gakpo can score goals at this level. As there's the switch to the left-hand side as it's going to get over Kevin Shada, but right there is Keane Lewis-Potter. Here's Potter. He's got space. There's the ball in. Headed down. As, yeah, there's going to be a whistle there as it looks like Van Hecke was kicked pretty good. So Spurs will get this one back, and yet again, Brentford, like they're just being able to deliver balls into the box with ease. There's no pressure here. By the way, and it looks like Archie Gray has had a howler of a first half himself. As we are in the 36th minute here, Spurs are facing a 2-0 deficit, so De Zerbi is going to have to do something here. Not exactly the start to the regular season I think fans were hoping for, as we have literally been essentially listless here in this first half when it comes to attacking. Here's Matisse Tell as he's absolutely being mugged. As Tell does a good job of holding on to this thing. Here's Bergvall. Here's Tonali. As Spurs will rotate now to the right side. Van Hecke lays it off for Archie Gray. And instead of looking forward for Mikey Moore. Speaking of Moore, here's Moore. Trying to cut in. Here's Mikey. Tries to find Tonali, and it's going to be taken away. But an errant pass means Spurs will hold on to this ball here. I think we only have one shot, and that was off target from Conor Gallagher. Not good enough. Here's Tonali. And Tonali tried to pass. That's going to be taken away. And Robbo will come away with this thing as this gets played back to a big Tony Kinski. I think Tonali's been solid. But this whole attack has been out of rhythm here for Spurs. As Kinski will play it off to Van Hecke. And that ball forward by Archie Gray went to absolutely nobody but Keane Lewis-Potter. So again, another giveaway here by Spurs. And they just have not been able to handle the pressure of Brentford. As Kelleher will play this one forward. As that falls right to Tonali. Here's Sandro playing it forward. Here's Mikey Moore. As Moore was able to hold on to it and give the ball right back to Tonali. Here's Richarlison. As Spurs do hang on to this thing. Here's the ball forward. Here's Richie. And he absolutely takes a shoulder. But it is a giveaway. And there's a deflection. Spurs come away with it. Here's Lucas. He's got a man to his left. Decides not to do it. He dribbles in. Here's Gallagher. Out to Mikey Moore now. There's no overlap on the right. Here's Bergvall. His shot. Tries to lay it in. And Spurs will come away with it again. That's a nice little passing sequence that freed up Bergvall. You got to take that shot, though, bud. Here's Matisse now. 1v1 off the left. Tries to get around the corner. And it looks like Jensen does a good job. But here's Tell again. In trouble. Robbo plays one to the backside. 2v1. Tonali. And that one will go 20 rows in. Ugh. You know, me personally, I think Tonali is going to be your box-to-box guy, a late box crasher. He's going to be I guess you can say the Adam Wharton, if you will, of this attack, right? It's going to, the base of the attack is going to start with Tonali and his passing ability as they try to run that midfield diamond. I think he's going to pay dividends. It's one thing as Spurs will clear this one out of the box as Brentford again as Richarlison completely misses that ball, as Brentford will come away with it. Yeah, I guess that's a good question too, because Adam, that's a very good question, because you also have Mateus Fernandez as well too, and so I guess you're going to answer that question is who's really going to be your DM? It's probably going to be Tonali. As Conor Gallagher applies pressure, but Brentford will try to play this one long. And yeah, there's going to be a foul right there against Dango. As we are pushing towards the end of the first half, Brentford leads 2, as they got 2 relatively easy goals here in the first half, as Spurs defense was just out of position. But towards the end of this first half, it looks like Spurs have kind of grown into this one a little. They've had a little bit more success in their attacking half. Hasn't manifested itself in shots on goal, as Azure here will try to clear this one long. Does. Right there is Senesi. As this one will come down, as Tell tries to fight for it, and there's going to be a foul. And they're going to say this one was against Tell, against Coyote there. Not exactly the best first half to open up your season if you're Spurs. As Bergvall will play this back to Big Tony Kinski. Kinski will have to get rid of it quick. Does. As Matisse Tell did a good job of getting positioning there, but there's a shot that's going to get ripped over the bar, as Dango tried one from way downtown there. It was just a heavy touch by Matisse Tell there, as Kinski's ball will get out of play here. As let me tell you, right? So if you're Roberto De Zerbi, your halftime conversation is making sure that the lads have their heads up and they're still in this game. You have to be able to make sure that you're still inspiring these players to go out there and still give a good second half performance. They're still not necessarily out of this match, but a lot of you're going to have to see some some changes at the half, because this half was just savagely just not good enough. As Collins will play this forward. That's a nice little ball forward right there. Here's Shada. And he's just got the space to move forward. That ball's going to get chipped forward. As Otara will play this one. Headed down. As this one will get out. As we are now in the 44th minute. As we are getting very close to the end of the first half here. But what I will say is, now that Spurs are down, we'd like to see a little bit more of this fighting spirit. I want to this is like gut check time. Your first half of the season hasn't gone your way. So let's see some fight in this team, right? If they can claw their way back and make this a match, and maybe even get a draw out of this one, I think Spurs fans will be a lot happier knowing that they put in maximum effort in this one. As this one will find Archie Ray. Gallagher will play it forward to Moore. Good passing right there by Mikey Moore. As we have 1 minute of added time here at the end of the first half. Let me know how you guys felt about this first half. where you thought some of our strengths were, where you thought some of our weaknesses were, and let me know who and if you think we need halftime adjustments here, who you would bring on. As Richie will play this one forward. Here's Mikey Moore. Moore trying to progress this thing forward. Lays it off. Here's Archie. As, of course, Archie's going to play this one back to Bergvall. Berg will lay it off to Senesi. As Richarlison couldn't keep his feet. And there's, again, another turnover as Senesi wins that foot race against Thiago. And there's your first half at the Gtech. And it wasn't exactly positive as Brentford has a 2-0 lead here. Quite honestly, yeah, there's going to have to be some wholesale changes. Let's go ahead and get into the halftime stats here. Quite honestly, it was all Brentford. Actually, the interesting thing is Spurs worked their way into that first half. The halftime possession stats are actually 50-50. XG, Brentford leads that one 1.25 to 0.09. Total shots, you're looking at 11 for Brentford, 3 for Spurs. Shots on target, 3 for Brentford, 0 for Spurs. Touches in the opposition box, 14-3. Brentford, big chances. Brentford have had 4. They've missed 2. Accurate passes. Spurs actually lead that one, 195, 193. Spurs do have a yellow card, and Brentford has 2 corners. When you actually look at the XG numbers from open play, Brentford 0.88 to Spurs 0.05, which is crap. XG on target, Brentford 1.24 to Spurs 0s across the board. When you look at shots off target, Brentford 5, Spurs 2. Block shots, Brentford has 3, Spurs have 1. Neither team has hit the woodwork. Shots inside the box, 7 for Brentford, 0 for Spurs. Shots outside the box, 4-3 to Brentford. Total passes, Spurs lead that one 232 to 221. Passes in the own half, 111.98 for Brentford. Passes in the opposition half, 97.82 for Spurs. Accurate long balls, 16 to 9 for Brentford. Accurate crosses, 6-1 to Brentford. Good Lord. Throws, 6-4 to Brentford. Of course, touches in the opposition box, 14-3. Brentford has been offside two times to Spurs 0. Of course, there was 1 yellow card. Fouls committed, Brentford 8, Spurs 7. So let's take a look at the defensive side. Both teams are even on tackles at 7. Interceptions, Brentford 9, Spurs 5. Kind of goes to show you how sloppy Spurs were in that first half when it came to possession. They were literally giving everything away. Again, blocks, Spurs have 2. Brentford has 1. Clearances, 10-4 Spurs. Keeper saves, 1-0 for Spurs, as it looks like Kelleher has yet to face a shot. Duels, Brentford leads the duel battle 27-24. Ground duels, Spurs lead that one 19-15. Aerial duels, 12-5 to Brentford. And again, as I said that early in the first half, Spurs are not committing on those 50-50 balls. Again, we just absolutely need to see some of that fight. Top player here in the first half for Brentford will be Vitaly Yanalt, who has an 8 rating. And for Spurs, it'll probably be Marco Senesi, who almost has a 7 rating. So interesting first half, as it was absolutely dominated for large portions by Brentford. I think Spurs weren't necessarily expecting the amount of pressure, how much gas Brentford was applying, and I think it caught them off guard. They were not able to get in a rhythm for the first 30 minutes, and we saw it a little bit in the late first half, as I was saying into the lead up to this game. I definitely saw Brentford scoring early, and I thought at the end of the first half Spurs would finally kind of get into this game, and sure enough they did. But now it's all about end result, right? So it's about putting quality chances in and just taking chances, because at this stage you're going to have to figure out a way to unlock Brentford's back four, and it doesn't. You don't see that with continuously backward passes, and if that means Archie Gray is going to have to take a couple chances when he's got space deep in the attacking position, play it in. Same thing with Mikey Moore. Mikey Moore has yet to get involved into this attack yet. He's had a couple nice touches where he's put himself in position to play something in, and he's laid off that to play it a little bit backwards. I'd like to see Sandro Tonali be a little bit more aggressive. That would be absolutely fantastic. But what I will say is that we're going to have to see changes here in the second half, and I would absolutely take Lucas Bergvall off the pitch because he's had just an absolutely disgusting first half. Giveaways, he had 2 clean giveaways, one early in the first half that could have led to a goal. The second one directly led to a goal as he couldn't progress the ball forward, from a defensive position. And, Brentford just made him pay. Listen, I like Lucas Bergvall, but, the only reason why Fernandez didn't play is because I think Roberto De Zerbi didn't think that his fitness levels were up. Okay, fair. But that being said, he's still in your match day squad, so he's gonna have to play a huge role for this team in the second half, and I would bring him on to start the second half if he's got it. And same thing with Conor Gallagher. I like Conor, but we do have James Maddison, and I would like to see some sort of involvement from James Maddison today because we absolutely have to have somebody who can pull the string for this attack. Because as of right now, we don't necessarily have that one. So, me personally, I would love to see wholesale changes. You guys let me know as well too, who you like to see coming on in the second half. Same goes for you guys as well too in the YouTube chat as well too. Let me know if you want to see some wholesale changes for this team. Let's see. Why didn't Mateus Fernandez start? Yeah, I think a lot of this has to do with fitness, and he didn't think he was good for even 60 minutes. So it's fair. But that being said, the second half, you want to see this team grow into this game and actually start putting meaningful shots on net. So from that standpoint, I would probably pull Lucas Bergvall. Let's see. You can support a different team, Unk. No need to stress yourself out 3 years in a row. That's kind of funny. Well, that being said, I've been supporting Spurs for 25 years now. And certainly the last couple seasons have been emotionally exhausting. Watching, our lack of depth. And essentially, that second Ange year was hard for me because, you have 13 first team players out. And your depth is essentially championship depth, and it was hard to watch in the Premier League. But at least it did lead to a European trophy. But last year was even worse. That was terrible. But to be honest with you, man, I'm a loyal Spurs supporter, so it just is what it is. Slinky got to come in. I would probably agree with that as well too. Listen, as much as I thought Richie would probably be good for this game. I think Dom. I think Dom is the type of guy because right now Richie is physically being dominated. When the ball goes forward, he doesn't have the strength to play against Collins or Azier for those 50-50 balls. I think Solanke is just a lot better suited for that one. Let's see. Dan G says no Poro, VDB, Udoji, Matters, Kudus, Fernandez, Savino, Marmouche. Well, we don't have Marmouche yet, so you should take Marmouche out of this one. That's at 8 planned first teamers. Yeah. So until actually Marmouche is officially a Spur, you can't add him to that. But all the rest of them, it's 100%. Matters probably should play today. Same with Fernandez. And of course, Savino wasn't going to even be, a part of the plans for the day anyway. But you're right. I would have been a lot happier if Poro and VDV were available. You're probably talking Carabao Cup against Charlton Athletic or next week, where we're going to see both VDV and Poro, Kudus and Decky. Me personally, we need Decky back sooner rather than later. As a matter of fact, I think Decky, once he regains his entire form, he's actually going to be your starting right winger, 100%. Let's see, Wayne Bonner here. Good to see you, Wayne. Says woeful performances, change is needed. Brentford came at us from the start, and they played some lovely football. Yeah, and the ease in which Brentford was able to transition. Their passing was so smooth, and Spurs didn't put them up against any semblance of pressure. That was the one thing that was a little bit disappointing, that we didn't see Spurs press back and make things a little a little uncomfortable for them because, our ability to generate takeaways. Now, we saw that a little bit at the end of the first half, but there has to be a commitment to pressing forward and not allowing Brentford just to be able to transition so smoothly. And I agree with you. I mean, they came at us from the off, and I don't think Spurs were prepared for it. Let's see. Richie's invisible and miles behind Tell and more. Midfield disappears, and the defense is all over the place, 100%. And that's the thing. It's like I would probably put in Solanke at the half because you absolutely need that big body, and especially when you're trying to run that midfield diamond. That's the tip of the diamond, right? Everything starts with Tonali. It gets played off of Solanke, and you need that big body to be able. You need that big body to be able to progress in the transitions to get forward, right? And the problem with Richie is it's been the problem with Richie the entire time. He's not big, he's not physical, and he can't hold his ground. And so when it comes to having your striker drop a little bit to make that first touch, for a fact you're going to get shoved in the back. That's going to be a physical battle, and so this probably should have been a match that Solanke started. And because we can't transition, it means that Matisse Tell and Mikey Moore really haven't been involved. And again, this is where, for me, Mateus Fernandez comes into the equation, because what Brentford is doing is keying in on Sandro Tonali. And when you actually have that midfield pairing where they can play off each other, it keeps some of these defenders a little bit more honest, right? Because you're not going to be able, because Tonali can make that pass. The problem with a guy like Lucas Bergvall, as we saw in the first half, he just gives the ball away, and he is not press resistant. When there is a little bit of pressure, he turns the ball over. He kind of crumbles a little bit. That unfortunately is what you get with the young player. Like my dad said, worse than last season. I don't think it's worse than last season at all, because we're only 45 minutes into the first game, right? You can accurately say that at the end of the month or at the end of September, right? When we actually have more than one half to have a sample size of whether or not it's going to be worse than last year. Fernandez definitely has to come in. I agree. My first three substitutions would be Mateus Fernandez. I would also bring in James Maddison, and I would bring in Solanke. And then I actually think that we're going to actually see what this attack actually looks like if there was quality on the pitch. 100%. But unfortunately, man, this was not the first half I think everybody envisioned. But that being said, understand that, as Dan G said here, that we didn't have Portland VDV starting this one. Matters and Fernandez were, started in the match day 18, but they started on the bench. So from that standpoint, it's time to get those two involved. And of course, we didn't have Solanke up top. The issue with Savinho and Marmoush is, number one, Marmoush is not a member of Spurs yet, so there's that. But also Savinho, because he was such a late addition, he was never going to be a part of the conversation today to begin with anyway. So you're essentially talking about next week. Let's see. Same old Rottenham, always losing garbage. Okay. Belt to okay. We might not finish 17th, but I don't see us finishing in the top half of the table, 12 best. I don't know, man. That seems to be an excessive overreaction to the first 45. Again, 45 minutes is not a sample size where you can be like, oh, same old Spurs. It's like, okay, understand that, we don't necessarily have our best 11. So let's go ahead and pump the brakes on it. But again, here's what I will say, that in order for Spurs to be able to achieve the goals set out and the expectations, number one, we absolutely have to stay healthy this season. Any type of injury crisis, that's not going to work out too well for this team. But the other thing is, we actually have to be able to have our first choice 11 on a week-to-week basis for us to even have a shot. But that being said, we're going to have to show a lot more consistency. But that also comes with making sure we have our best 11, and of course the routine of week to week training and understanding that those 11 are going to be available. Once that happens, I would probably assume that Spurs will kick on. Right now, it is all about trying to bank points, and in some regard, treading water until we absolutely have our best 11. We're giving up way too much space, without a doubt. And I said this just a few minutes ago, that there is not a complete commitment to the press. Right, we are 5 yards off the ball. And only a couple guys are actually initially pressing the first initial ball carrier. We're going to have to be able to commit to it, make it far less easier for Brentford to be able to move that ball with ease up the pitch. Right, this team actually showed some tenacity at the end of last season to make things very uncomfortable for their opponent. We actually were able to generate quite a bit of turnovers. And again, I think Spurs were taken out of rhythm early in this one. I don't think they were expecting Brentford to be that gung-ho. TK says Archie Gray not looking bad, honestly. He looks a little – here's the thing. I wouldn't say he's been bad, but there was a couple moments where he overcommitted defending that allowed his his man to get ahead of him, attack a corner, play balls in. Mostly Archie has been solid. But he's also been kind of timid as well, too. So let's go ahead and see if we are ready to start this second half, as we will. And it looks like Connor Pinkham says, yeah, Fernandez is coming on. That's good. And then, of course, not even close to our first team yet. I agree. As we are waiting for this second half to begin, let me know how you guys feel about this second half, right? Because I certainly don't think Spurs are out of it yet, right? If they concede another goal, that's something completely different. But it's still at 2-0. There's 45 minutes to get back into this one, and it starts with having a clean start to the second half, and it looks like play has begun, and immediately there's going to be a whistle. So it looks like Rodrigo Betancourt has come on for Spurs as well, too. As I will have our halftime sub. So yeah, Mateus Fernandez is in as well too. So it looks like a midfield pairing has been swapped. So it looks like Bergvall as Van Hecke will head this one away. As let's see. Yeah, so it looks like Gallagher and Bergvall are off. Fernandez and Rodrigo Betancourt are in. So there you go. As this one will get out for a Brentford throw in here. So we will get our first look at Mateus Fernandez. And again, no disrespect to Lucas Bergvall, but that being said, he is still in that developmental curve. He's still very raw. So from that standpoint, it is what it is. I understand why Roberto De Zerbi definitely gave him a start today. But that being said, it was also a gamble as well too. That this could have been a situation where Fernandez started, and then if you want to bring him off a little bit after the first half, then understandable. As this ball gets popped straight in, as players are wondering what's going on. But this one will get out. And it looks like Brentford is trying to shout that, that Senesi was holding Collins' jersey. But that being said, it initiated with Collins absolutely, holding Senesi's arm. But yeah, Senesi did bring him down. But tit for tat, right? Yeah, a point would be absolutely massive if Spurs can work their way back into this one. I agree with that 100%. Spurs have to get off the mark within the first 10 minutes of the second half without a shadow of a doubt. As this one will be a corner here. As this ball gets whipped in to the back post, headed forward down by Collins. There's a shot. Oh, what a save. And there it is. as Brentford puts their third past. Good Lord. And there's your ball game. And I think that might have been Kabore. Again, Kinski with an initial fantastic save, but the rebound goes straight to, it looks like Kabore. Coyote. And there was nobody there. And again, we're going to look at the replay to find out how come home dude wasn't marked. So there's the initial ball in that Collins redirects off. There was a good shot, and it looked like it was Richarlison's job right there to protect the far post. If that came in, yeah, it was both Senesi and Richarlison that just allowed Coyote right there the ability just to play one in. So unbelievable. Spurs now down 3-0. This was the one thing you didn't want to see here. As here's Matisse Tell. He's got some area. Fernandez off to more shoots straight at Kelleher. But that being said, hey, it's a shot on target. As Bencourt now off the throw in here finds Mateus Fernandez. That was some good ball progression right there from Matisse Tell to find Fernandez, and Fernandez to progress it forward to Mikey Moore. But that being said, if you're Mikey Moore, you actually have to put a better shot on target than straight at the keeper. Here's Mikey Moore trying to get around the corner. This one will get played out. And I think they're going to say this was a foul. Snap back to reality. Whoop. There's Spurs. Couldn't wait for this morning, but I could wait some more, I guess. Here's Tell on the left against Coyote. Here's Tell trying to cut in. Still on the ball here. Marked by 2. There's a ball in. Under-delivered here as Coyote will try to clear it. But Spurs will hold this as this one gets played back to Big Tony Kinski. 2 of these goals came off of rebounds that resulted in players being completely unmarked and just allowed to have free looks at the net. Matter of fact, I think all three were in that vein as Matisse Tell tries to play around the corner. He's got Robbo wide open. There's a ball in to the back post. Here's Moore. Oh, and again, he puts it right at Kelleher. Oh, Mikey, you gotta be a little bit better here. Mikey Moore was wide open coming out, fading in from the right-hand side, and Robbo puts one on a dime. And he doesn't go right or left. He tries to go through the legs of Kelleher. And again, Mikey Moore, 2 very good opportunities to score a goal here, and he's put it right at Kelleher. Come on, Mikey. That's the thing. It's like in the run of play, you might have one legit opportunity to take those type of shots. He had 2 in 2 minutes, and both times were literally right at, didn't make Kelleher even work. As shot is working against Archie Gray, and there's a takeaway from Van Hecke. As this one will come down. Brentford still in the box as he tries to clear this one, as Richie gets absolutely taken down by Azier. No whistle, so Brentford will come away with this. As Sangari holds on to it, here's Jensen. Plays it off to the left. Here's Keane Lewis. He'll play one in as Van Hecke tries to clear it. As the whistle blows here, As out of the scrum, we will see exactly what's going on. As Brentford's looking for a penalty, is after the shot, a bicycle kick. It looks like Van Hecke got his arm on it. As that one was redirected, as Shada goes down against Bentancur. Why am I doing the play-by-play? I do it every week for Spurs. I do it for Major League Soccer. I do it for the USL. I do it for the U.S. men's national team. It's just how I do things, bud. As it looks like they are going to give Brentford the penalty. Good Lord. Last year, they scored 8 goals from pens, which was tied for most in the Premier League. So it looks like Brentford's about to, essentially put Spurs to the sword here, as Igor Thiago will take this one. Here we go. Here's Thiago. And he hits the bar. He hits the post. Oh, what a saving grace here. As Thiago hits the post. As Spurs are trying to get out of trouble, they will. Here's Sandro Tonali as he plays it forward. Tell in a foot race will get it. As Tell will lose possession here. As Spurs avoid the penalty here, as Thiago absolutely missed the penalty. That would have been it. Well, you would probably assume that that Coyote goal probably was it, but as Tonali will play this forward. Here is Matisse Tell. Come on, Tell. You got to drive forward, bud. There you go. Trying to get around. Tell does a very good job. Good defense right there, but that was a hell of a move right there by Matisse Tell to get around as we see this penalty again, and he just flat out missed it. As he essentially, he did a good job of beating Big Tony Kinski there. Man. Spurs dodged a bullet here, but we are now in the 56 minutes, so Spurs got to get going as Matisse Tell will be taking this corner here for Spurs. I believe this is their first of the game. As they're going to play this one short with Tonali. Here's Tell as he puts one back post, as that one's going to get out. Who is it off? As Coyote's running, as Coyote is on the ground, looks like he got his head knocked right there against Senesi. As he looks like he's all right. As we probably should see some more changes here for Spurs coming in. As the Tottenham faithful just looks on in stunned silence. Back to Rangers for more. I think he's going to Germany. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we just didn't have a competent right winger. But that being said, it's like this is Mikey Moore shows the reason why he's not terrible. But when you have those opportunities, you have to finish them. Here's Robbo trying to play it in. Had Tonali, not a great pass. So here comes Brentford. Here's Otara. Nice job right there by Senesi. As Spurs will play this forward now. Here's Fernandez. Tonali. Up to Robbo. Here's Bentancur. And now it's Van Hecke. Now they got Robbo. As Matisse Tell will lay this off to Sandro. He's got a runner. There's a shot by Tonali. That's going to take a redirection. But right there was Kelleher. As play resumes here, as Brentford will play out of the back here. Again, there's just no pressure that's being applied here. There you go. There you go, Rodrigo. As Richarlison tries to track down Asia right there. Shots on goal, 5 for Brentford, 3 for Spurs as this ball goes forward. That's a good challenge right there. By Senesi against Kevin Shada. Shada. Here's Matisse Tell. I don't know, man. Matisse Tell didn't necessarily do enough. Here's Archie Gray. Lays it off for Mikey. Back to Mateus. Mattias. Here's Senesi. Betancourt. Out to Matisse. As he's being marked by 2 defenders. Just attack, man. Just attack. That's a good ball in. Finds Richarlison. I think that just bounced off of Richarlison. As here comes Brentford as they're... Oh, that's a nice little play by Fernandez to break that up. Spurs definitely look better in the second half when it comes to ball progression. They look like they're a lot better than they did. As Mateus Fernandez under pressure just knows how to keep a hold of the ball. Here's Mikey Moore as he's got 1v1. Here's Moore. Moore plays it to the backside. There's just nobody there. Running after it is Matisse Tell, who will hold it. Here's Tell. There's the deflection as Brentford will come away with it. God damn it. In that last sequence, that nice little layoff from Matisse Tell was great, but he's got to be in that attacking frame where he slows down the ball instead of just pushing forward. It just allows defenders to come right at him. Sometimes it just drives me batshit crazy. That's a good ball forward. Nice little layoff right there by Tell. Here's Robbo. As Fernandez. Play it off to the right. Here's Mikey Moore, who's got the step. Here's Moore. Moore! Ooh, what a save. By Keller as he gets his hand on it. Much better from Mikey Moore here. As he made an absolute beautiful move to get himself in a position. This time he actually challenges Kelleher. It wasn't straight at his goddamn feet or chest. As Kelleher actually had to at least make a save here. As Mikey is going to be absolutely upset with the second half performances. 3 opportunities in on Kelleher. 0 goals. Here's Tonali. He's going to chip it to the back. Oh, ho, 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 ho. As Van Hecke is wondering, where was that call? As we see it again, Tonali puts a good ball into the back post. Okay. Looks like Potter did it. Potter didn't do anything right there. Keane Lewis Potter. As we are now in the 62nd and a half minute here. Much better in the attack for Spurs. As they are actually playing better defense here as there's a whistle. They're saying this one will go against Fernandez. as they are doing a good job of getting in dangerous situations for shots. But, man, those 3 opportunities by Mikey Moore, man, to not come away with a goal in any of those situations, man. What I will say is Brentford's first goal when Keane Lewis Potter was essentially unmarked right in the central area of the 6-yard box. That was a legit goal that we just absolutely were turned off as this one goes in. Shada tried to get on the end of it. That's going to take a redirection. So here comes Spurs now. The second and third goal came off rebound situations where the goals, their goal scorers just were left unmarked. Absolutely shoddy defense by Spurs in this game. All 3 goals, really, if you really want to say it, because it's absolutely true. Here's Tell trying to play one in. Listen, absolutely nowhere. That's a good little play by Van Hecke as he tried to get the ball back. There's a ball forward. Nice play right there by Bentoncourt. He's not going to get the whistle as Kevin Shada was looking for it. As Spurs have actually held possession quite well in these last 10 minutes here. And it's amazing. It's amazing the difference of having Matias Fernandez on the pitch. He has absolutely changed the dynamic of this midfield. As Mikey Moore kept it in. As Brentford will come away with it. Here's Thiago. Let's see. NW says put Williams Barnett in. Why not? I would probably assume we're going to see it at some point. Spurs still have another 10, 15-ish minutes where they absolutely need a goal. As Robbo does a good job defensively right there. This year they get relegated? I don't think so at all. I don't think Spurs are going to be as bad as Hull City, Ipswich, Coventry. And look at Richarlison overcommits. Yeah, that's going to be. They're actually going to rule this one against Richarlison. Ooh, that was terrible. But yeah, the idea that Spurs are going to get relegated this year is funny. We're clearly a better team, and there's the 3 that came up from last year. It's going to be a race to the bottom for those 3. As it looks like Jensen's going to come off for Yarmouk. Otara will come off for Anthony. And looks like this will be his first appearance here in the Premier League for Jaden Anthony, as he came over from Burnley last year. So welcome to Brentford, kid. And it looks like we will see some changes here as Mikey Moore will come off, and it looks like James Maddison is going to be coming on. So not a bad day for Mikey Moore. I would probably assume he wants those 3 back, but it looks like Maddison will come on, and it looks like Richie is coming off, and it looks like Big Dom Solanke will take his spot. So it's good to see James Maddison back, and it's good to see Dom Solanke. So we're in the 67th minute. Let's see what Matters can do here. As Maddison is absolutely hounding. As Kelleher will have to get rid of this, and he does. This long ball will. Oh, nice. Nice little play right there by Archie Gray to make sure Thiago doesn't get involved. As Senesi will play this forward. Good redirection as Here comes Brentford to Senesi. Tries to trip it up, but that ball came in and shot it, headed forward right at Big Tony Kinski. Let's see, TZ15311 says, we're so cooked. We're cooked, bro. Well, in this match, for sure, we're cooked. But we could end this thing quite well, as there's going to be a whistle here as James Maddison will go down. We need to put the youngsters in, man, if we're not winning. I'm sure we will. Having Luca Williams-Barnett on the match day squad was actually quite a nice surprise. I'm sure we'll see him at some point. Spurs will hold possession here. Spurs have been a little bit more aggressive here in the second half. They're actually challenging for 50-50 balls this time around. And their progression has been very, very good, as there's a giveaway right there by Robbo. And there's going to be a whistle against Senesi, as we have about 20 minutes left in this one. Brentford lead 3-0. But I will say it has been a tale of two halves. I think Spurs have been far and away better in the second half. But yeah, as they show Roberto De Zerbi there. And and you can tell that he is absolutely not pleased. But that being said, there is something to take away with this one. And it's obvious that, the idea of starting a guy like Lucas Bergvall probably wasn't the right idea. And that drastically changed in the second half with Matias Fernandez on the pitch. So we look a lot more compact. We look like a lot more solid in the midfield. And that's actually paid dividends, especially when we're trying to progress that ball forward from midfield spaces. As Otara tried to, Sangara, as he tried to weave one into the box right there. Good defense by Spurs. Here's Robbo, plays it forward. Here's Dom Solanke. And there's going to be a whistle. Yeah, this wasn't the outcome I thought we would see. I thought Spurs would ultimately get their 3 points, but I was right by the scoreline of 3-1. I just didn't see it going. I saw it going the opposite way. Spurs will probably get one. That's a good pass forward. Here's Maddison. Matters. And he was double marked as that ball was taken away, but the pass will stay with Spurs in the attacking end. As Matisse Tell now is on the right. Here's Tell. Off to Matters. Oh, it's Archie Gray. Was trying to make that run in, but he stopped. Errant pass by Matisse Tell, but Spurs will still hold possession here. Actually, I will say that my brother supports Arsenal. That's the reason why I'm a Spurs fan. I absolutely cannot stand Arsenal. Here's Tell. Fun fact, for you, Tottenham are not good. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge the entire season off of one performance to start. That's a good ball forward. Good defense right there by Keane Lewis Potter. No, I just don't. I just never liked Arsenal. As looks like Spurs were looking for a whistle. They weren't going to get it. That's a good tackle right there by Rodrigo Betancourt, and then Matters just gives it away. Again, a good tackle right there by Betancourt to get the ball back. And Spurs will hold possession here. It's Archie Gray. Here's Matisse Tell now. What I will say about the back-to-back 17th place finishes is that two things. Number one, actually three things. Number one, especially last season, our coaching was absolutely terrible. But number two, this is the first summer window where Spurs actually flex their financial muscle. And this is the most quality I've ever seen come through the door in one summer transfer window. So there's that. And number 3, I never expected this team to hit the ground running, not right away. Yeah, we had a preseason, but that being said, we're still getting better players through the door. Like we just got Savinho, who, again, I don't necessarily rate, but we probably could end up with Marmoush. That's going to help quite a bit. And who knows if we end up with Gakpo, and if we do, all of a sudden our attacking 3 is going to look a lot better. But that being said, it's going to take time for those guys to embed. And we're still waiting for Mohamed Kudus and Kulusevski to come back as well, too. So from that standpoint, it's going to be a minute until we actually get our first choice 11. But that being said, it's like I would probably assume that this team gels sooner rather than later. And, by week 3, it's going to look a lot better. It's one thing to play. It's one thing to play preseason matches where, most of your first team is just working to get themselves ready for the regular season. It's another thing to be in the gauntlet of what it is, the Premier League. So from that standpoint, me personally, I just think that, by the 3rd week, it's going to look a lot better. Hot take, Daniel Levy was not the problem. It's the club's mentality that's wrong. I think that's a part of it. Yeah, I mean, when when you're not winning trophies and when you're not necessarily making the financial commitment that's needed for being a team like Spurs, and again, they're a top 8 team in the world when it comes to revenue. And when you look at the things that they were able to do, getting the new stadium, getting the new training ground, and being in a position to spend and then not spend, yeah, it's a problem. Like think about it this way, right? We had Maurizio Pochettino, and when Pochettino was in, he was absolutely begging for better players, and we never backed Pochettino. Culminating in that great summer transfer window when we did absolutely zero business that window. And of course, that team needed reinforcements, and we just simply never backed Pochettino. And when the team got off to a slow start in 2019, 2020, he gets sacked, and then they bring in, Jose Mourinho and don't back him. They bring in Conte, don't back him. They brought in Postecoglou. Guess what? They didn't back him. And then they brought in Thomas Frank and then proceeded not to back him. As that one goes wide, as Thiago gets on the end of that one. And this is the first summer transfer window where a manager was absolutely backed to the hill. And so from that standpoint, to be able to have a guy like Roberto De Zerbi, and then to be able to actually go out and get his transfer targets. And by the way, Spurs, can essentially afford to buy anyone, just with the amount of money that they make. And of course, they did a very good job of getting rid of the dead weight this summer. So, understand this is a new project, and yeah, it sucks, man. It sucks. Having to start over again. And yeah, today wasn't really all that great, but what Spurs fans are enthusiastic about is that we're finally backing the coach, and we're giving him the resources and tools to be able to kick up the table. And, I've said it on multiple occasions leading into the run-up of this game as this ball gets headed back and there's Kinski, is that, 2 things absolutely have to happen this season in order for us to kick up the table and potentially be in competition for a European spot. Is that, number 1, we have to stay healthy, right? We cannot go through another season with an injury crisis of the last 2. The other thing is that we are going to absolutely have to be a consistent team where, as Madison gets pulled down, but we're going to have to be a consistent goal scoring team. It was one of the things that we just didn't get last year, which was consistent goal scoring. There was a stretch last year where our goals were coming from set pieces, and through the run of play, we were just not great. So that's absolutely going to have to change. But here's Madison. And there's the takeaway about Brentford. But that being said, if we're able to get Marmouche over the line, that's certainly going to help at the striker position. Adding a little bit more quality at that position, being in a good situation where we can actually rotate strikers, so we're not necessarily going to be 100% dependent on a dude like Dominic Solanke, put him in a position where he's going to get hurt. But also upgrading the left wing, and I think that's where either Savino long term, as far as this season, will be, and then if we can get Cody Gakpo, all of a sudden our right and left wing is going to be a lot better than what we saw today. As Spurs continue to hold possession. As we are in the 78th minute. I mean, at best, if we're able to stay healthy and we get consistent performances, I think, finishing in a European spot, I don't think it's going to be the Champions League this year. But that being said, the Premier League outside of Arsenal seems like it's going to be a little bit wide open. There's a lot of new coaching changes with some of the top teams. We have no idea how those teams are going to progress and play out. City loses Rodri. And, we have no idea what Manchester United is going to be like. Liverpool, also under a new manager, Andoni Iraola. So as far as I'm concerned, the top 5 teams in the Premier League, outside of Arsenal, has a feeling of potentially being wide open. And then, of course, when you look at Newcastle and Villa, both of those teams got decimated, losing some of their top players. Newcastle more than Villa. I still think Villa is going to be a very competitive team. But that being said, the way I look at it is, Spurs do have an opportunity if they're going to be able to stay healthy and consistent. And if you told me that Spurs finish either in the 5th or 6th position this season, get a European spot, and make a cup run, that would be a very good season for Spurs under De Zerbi. But that being said, let's understand that, going into today's game, I never thought that this would be a cakewalk against a team like Brentford. They're a very solid, well-organized team. And, on their day, they can beat anybody in the top 10 in the Premier League. Spurs were going to have to be dialed in from the first whistle, and they weren't. But when I look at this team, I see a team that has more quality depth. And understand, the last 2 seasons, when we actually hit the injury crises that we had, and we were trying to stay competitive, our depth was essentially championship quality depth. And we saw exactly what happened. In that second season of Postecoglou, when players came back, he just elected to play the Europa League. Okay, fair enough. He wanted to chase a cup. We were able to beat Manchester United in the final. Fantastic. But again, we did not do enough to back any of those managers. And because of it, when injuries hit, as Tell will push this one wide, when the injuries hit, man, we didn't have the depth to be able to compete. And at least this season, it looks like we're going to be able to have the depth. I like the fact that we improved the back line. When VDV, that's the problem. It's even at left center back, we didn't necessarily have a competent backup. We were, essentially relying on Ben Davis as that backup left center back. At least this year we have Marco Senesi. That's going to pay dividends. I like the fact that we brought in Robbo to compete with Udogie. And in the midfield as well too. I think we're going to be okay in the midfield. It's going to be interesting to see, but the attack still needs to be I'll be the first one to admit it's our attack right now isn't going to be great, and that could be an Achilles heel if we don't still add a couple more pieces to this attack. But if we do, if we're able to get Marmouche and Gakpo in, you're going to see Roberto De Zerbi have far more options at his disposal. And I think that's going to pay dividends. So we'll see. But we are in the 82nd minute, and off comes Thiago. Let's see. Yeah, let's be perfectly honest about today. This was, it was a bad performance. Okay. So you forget it. You move on to the Carabao Cup midweek. And then, of course, we have We have next weekend as well too. I'm not going to sit here and dwell on this performance, but there is some good to take out of it. I personally believe the second half played a lot better than the first, but again, we didn't necessarily give ourselves, a chance, especially on the defensive side. In that first half, that was absolutely ugly. Let's see. You got a defense pressing problem, not an attack problem. Actually, I do think we have an attack problem because, quite honestly, we have a left winger. The guy who's playing left winger is a striker. We have a 19-year-old right wing, and Richarlison just is not press resistant, right? But I will agree with that as well too. We did not press enough. We did not make Brentford feel. We did not put Brentford under any pressure today. Let's see who said that Brentford might be a top 5 team. Yeah, it's going to be ERS1 ears. Believe it or not, Brentford will be a top 5 team. Here's the interesting thing. As funny as that sounds, over the last couple of seasons, we've seen a lot of progression from mid-table teams that you would just expect to be there, kick their way up. We saw Sunderland and Bournemouth last year. Crystal Palace getting into Europe, although it was via obviously FA Cup. But that being said, it's like we've been seeing a lot of progression, and we've seen those mid-table teams spend a little bit more than generally what they spend, and they've had good success. Would I be surprised if Brentford finishes in a top 5 position? No. They're very excellently coached. They have a system where they're able to plug and play. They'll lose players and they don't miss a beat. As it looks like Archie Gray is going to come off now here in the 84th minute. The interesting teams to me are going to be Newcastle and Villa. It's going to be interesting to see exactly how those teams progress through the season. Those two teams lost a lot of top-end talent, and it's going to be interesting to see how they replace them and then kick on. I still think Villa is going to actually be incredibly competitive this season. I don't think that's going to be, they lost a couple hitters from their starting 11, but I still think they're going to be competitive enough where they'll still be able to give teams a good game. Newcastle, on the other hand, that's going to be the interesting one. They get rid of Eddie Howe. They lost over the last 2 seasons. They lost a lot of talent. So that's going to be the interesting one. I certainly don't think Newcastle is going to get relegated. I think that would be a stretch because I actually do believe that Coventry, Ipswich, and Hull won't have enough. Of the 3, maybe Coventry has a chance. But I think those 3 are going to be the 3 that go down. Here's Udoji. Lays it off. Madison. Solanke, he gets a shot block. I don't think Spurs are in a bad predicament. I think more than anything, that's shit talking. That's fine. You don't have to be a Spurs fan. That's fine. It doesn't bother me, but it's like, you look at the amount of quality that came in. That was absolutely game changing, right? Sandro Tonali was an absolutely huge get. Same thing with Mateus Fernandez. When your top rivals are vying for the same players, and you're able to outspend them, that kind of says a lot. But the other thing is, we have a manager that has got back to the roots and the DNA of what this team is. Spurs historically have been an attacking team, and we saw this team get so far away from it under Thomas Frank that we were just absolutely garbage for long stretches last year. It didn't help that we got injured, but even if we actually had our first choice 11, it still wasn't going to amount to anything because, quite frankly, the players didn't believe in them. And then the idea to get Igor Tiago or Igor, what's his ass, the Croatian coach, as this ball is going to get forward. Here's Udoji. And they're going to say this one's against you, Doji. I have Spurs in the top 10 this year. Again, I don't think they're going to challenge for a Champions League spot. I really don't. I don't think they have the attack capable of scoring the necessary goals that are needed. To get into that European spot, you have to score a minimum of 70. To be pushing into the top 4, you're going to need to score at least, anywhere between 70 to 80 and concede no more than 50. And I don't think Spurs have it. But, for a Europa League, Conference League, is that, finishing anywhere between 5th and 8th, is that possible? Sure, it's possible. Can Spurs make a cup run in the Carabao or the FA Cup? Yeah, it's possible. And if you actually told me at the end of the year that Spurs finished 6th in a Europa League spot and got to Wembley in one of those competitions, I would think that would be a fantastic season. And I think that's very possible. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the sky is falling after week 1. But what I will say is that, we have some incomings. We have a couple more players coming in before the window closes, and it's going to take a couple weeks for those guys to get embedded. And I think when we have something that resembles our first choice 11, I think this team is going to look far and away better. So that's the thing. By the end of September, it's going to look completely different. Let's see. You can finish top 5, but we'll need to follow our lead in playing more defensively. Who's our Adam? Follow our lead. Let's see. Alex says should have sold Bergvall, not to the level, and that's the thing. I still think Bergvall potentially has the wherewithal to go. I know there are 2 teams that are certainly in on Bergvall, and I think if Spurs get a deal, that quite frankly blows them away, I think Bergvall is going to go 100%. I like Bergvall, but yeah, you're right. I don't think he's ready for the Premier League. Frank would have done a better job. You're absolutely high. Thomas Frank was easily our worst coach in the last 50 years. And that's saying something too, because we had Christian Gross at one point. This team is poverty. Okay. By every single metric, Spurs print money. We're actually now just actually spending the type of money. For years, we were right around that 42% when it comes to revenue to wage percentage. As this ball gets whipped in, and this will go over the crossbar. For years, we were right at 42%. There were championship teams that were spending at a higher level as far as that revenue to wage turnover. And Spurs were just not competing for the same caliber of player as their contemporaries in the Big Six, right? So this is the first year that Spurs are willing to actually pay the wages to get top players in. And, our summer transfer window, again, probably was the best under Enoch. But that being said, I would expect Spurs to be active in January, and I expect them to be active next summer as well too. I would probably assume that in the next 3 years, you're probably going to see Spurs compete for top honor. Now, whether or not they win it is something completely different, but they're going to continue to build around Roberto De Zerbi, and his expectation is to compete for league title. And it wouldn't surprise me if Spurs win a few trophies over the next 3 years. Yeah, it's funny. Let's see. Dunder Milflin 2025. I love how people judge a team by one game. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like Clay Jank says, we'll need to see it first to believe it. Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of in that same boat. I'm kind of one of those players as well too. People as well too, where I've seen dog shit, for so long, like even under Pochettino, where he coached up a lot of young players and got them performing at a top end level. And when we absolutely needed to see reinforcements come in to add to that team, we just didn't do it. to be so close for that many years, to get to a Champions League final and then not take the final steps to get over the mountain. It was disheartening. And when you see that for years, and you see that type of attitude, you get to a point where it's like, this is great, and spending money and finally acting like the big club that you are, and then you want to have that belief and that faith, but you also kind of want to see it on the pitch as well too. So I kind of agree with it. So let's see. With this first game, I see exactly what I saw last year: gaps everywhere. Yeah, but again, we don't have our best players on the pitch today. But I guess you can say that's kind of a weak excuse. Let's see. How did you become a Tottenham fan? It's because my brother's an Arsenal fan, and when I was 19, so we were talking 99, 2000, I would go out on the weekends with my brother, and we would go drinking, and I would stay over at his house because I didn't want to drive home, and he would wake up in the morning like at 6 a.m. to watch Arsenal play. And I remember watching those matches, and I absolutely hated Arsene Wenger, and didn't like Nicholas Anelka, Dennis Bergkamp, David Seaman as this game goes final. And so I remember going on those early search engines looking to find out who Arsenal's main rival was, and it was Spurs. And that's how I became a Spurs fan. And by the way, Spurs are 100% a big club. Their history would suggest that they're a big club. All right, let's take a look at the chat here. And Dan Davenport, good to see you. Says, hi, Steve and chat. Just got back from food shopping. I hope that went well, man. Can't believe the score I just seen on the internet. Let's see. It's gone belly up. Tonali looks good. Yeah. I actually think he played pretty well. I think he played quite well, especially in that second half. And when he actually had his midfield partner, when Mateus Fernandes came on, you actually saw what this thing is going to look like moving forward. By the way, I had a feeling that Tonali was going to go for $100 million. Like, don't get me wrong. The prices that players go for in the Premier League now has reached kind of excessive levels. But that being said, it's like when you look at the teams that were in on them, Spurs were going to have to overpay, and they certainly did. But I actually felt like Tonali was going to be one of those players that were going to be a £100 million player, and I'm glad we have him. Let's see, Super Leeds United doing Spurs Super Leeds United Spurs going darn. Okay. Let's see. You've never really replaced Gaza and Venables. Okay. Let's see. Wenger did nothing to me personally. You don't know that, bud. You don't know the phone calls I've gotten. I'm just playing you right. You lost 3-0, and you're talking about positives you saw. Yeah, I am. Because we actually played a little bit better in the second half, comparative to the first half. By the way, that first half was absolutely ugly. There's no way you can look at that and be like, yeah, it was dreadful. There was a reason why we had to take Bergvall off. And the thing about this is I was like, yesterday when I was going over my starting 11, I had Mateus Fernandes in the starting 11 just because for me, it's like, again, this is nothing about Lucas Bergvall personally. It's just we know what Bergvall is, and he's not a finished product yet. And I figured if Fernandes was going to be in the match day squad, that he was probably going to start. I didn't think this was the right occasion to bring on a guy like Lucas Bergvall, and sure enough, that was absolutely proven right. Had we started with Fernandes and Maddison as that midfield three, I think this looks a little bit better. Who knows exactly how that would have played out in the first half, but clearly in that second half, this team controlled possession a lot better. Their passing and their transitions became a lot cleaner. They looked a lot smoother. They were creating opportunities, and Mikey Moore misses 3 very, very crucial opportunities. And of course, we were essentially, we are clean sheeted today. It is what it is. But that being said, let's go ahead and look at the stats today. As the final whistle, Spurs actually ended up winning the possession 59-41. When you look at XG, this was all Brentford 3.96 to Spurs 0.47. Total shots 26-9. Shots on target, 8-4 to Brentford. Touches in the opposition box, 40-17. Big chances. Brentford had 6, Spurs had 2. Big chances missed. Spurs missed there both. And looks like Brentford missed 3. Accurate passes, 436 for Spurs, 292 for Brentford. Both teams had a yellow card, and Brentford dominated the corners 7-3. When you're looking at XG from open play, Brentford 1.37 to 0.44. XG on set play 1.80 to 0.03. Quality, non-penalty XG 3.17 to 0.47, and XG on target 2.84 to 0.56. So I mean, really, when you're talking about quality in the attacking end, I mean, Brentford from the minute go was absolutely just beautiful today. Hats off to Brentford. Let's see. Shots off target, 11-3. That went to Brentford. Shots on target, 8-4. Block shots, Brentford had 7. Spurs had 2. Looks like Brentford hit the woodwork once. Shots inside the box, 24. 22-4. Shots outside the box, 6-5. Total passes, 526 to 353 for Spurs. Passes in the own half, 188 to 165. Passes in the opposition half, 275 to 127. As Spurs, that actually kind of reflects just the way Spurs were playing in the second half. First, accurate long balls, 26-14. Brentford, accurate crosses, 11-4. Brentford. Both teams had 11 throw. Touches in the opposition box, 40-17. And that just let you know how dominant Brentford was for large stretches, especially in that first half. Offsides, Brentford 3, Spurs 2. Both teams had 1 yellow card. Fouls committed. Brentford 17, Spurs 14. On the defensive side, Spurs actually win the tackle battle 19-18. Interceptions, and this is absolutely huge because Spurs gave away the ball a tremendous amount in the first half. Interceptions, 14 for Brentford, 7 for Spurs. Blocks, 6-2 Spurs. Clearances, 22-16 Spurs. Keeper saves, 5-4, again, Spurs. The duel battle, Brentford wins this one, 60-59. Ground duels, 46-36 to Spurs. Aerial duels, 24-13. And successful dribbles, Spurs had 11 to Brentford's 4. And that was the long and short of this one. Spurs were not prepared to come into this one, and that was evident from the opening whistle. I did like some of the things I saw at the end of the first half. It felt like Spurs were getting into it. But for the most part, they were thoroughly dominating that first 45 to the point where, one of the things they absolutely could not do was concede in the first 10 minutes in the second half. And sure enough, they conceded in the first 10 minutes on a corner, leaving home dude unmarked. And at that stage, it was pretty much over. So, for me, the takeaway was that, as soon as we actually got our first choice midfield pairing, the game got drastically better for Spurs. Both Tonali and Fernandes look like they're going to be, they're going to pay dividends. They actually look good playing off each other. But again, a lack of an attacking threat in this match as Spurs were getting forward in the second half. We didn't see anything out of Richie. We didn't see anything when Solanke came. Credit, I guess you can say, to Matisse Tell. He looked better in the second half compared to the first half. He was able to get forward and attack defenders and try to get balls in. And of course, Mikey Moore in that second half had 3 point-blank opportunities that he just did not convert. And that's the thing. It's like, as much as I like Mikey Moore, again, the raw talent is obvious, right? Again, hopefully this will get remedied in the transfer market, because it was obvious, in today's match where, we're not going to get far with young kids playing meaningful minutes on the wing. We have to be able to improve. And if anything, this game pointed out to me was the fact that, wing play is going to be something that is going to be absolutely pivotal. And again, on the right side, the interesting thing was the fact that, we still have, I guess we do have a timetable on Mohamed Kudus and Decky. We just don't exactly know when they're going to come back. So in the meantime, we still have to be able to improve in those areas. And if we're able, to get Gakpo in along with Savino. I think that is going to pay huge dividends until we actually see a Mohamed Kudus or Deki get back. And, along with Omar Mamouche, I think that's actually going to help quite a bit in the striker position as well, too. So there's still a lot of moving parts here when it comes to improving the attack, but that was the main takeaway, where I think we're going to be fine once we actually get VDV and Poro into that back line. I think we're going to be fine defensively. I think we're going to be fine in the midfield as well too. But again, it's all going to be about, consistency getting forward in the attack, scoring goals. And, hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But again, I thought the second half was better than the first, but ultimately this is not the way you want to start your Premier League season. Getting absolutely dummied on the road 3-0 to a Brentford team that doesn't necessarily have those issues. So I will say that there are still areas that we absolutely need to improve. Absolutely, without a doubt. I thought you left my life after the World Cup. Nope. I'm not going anywhere, my guy. Feel bad you chose Spurs as a team to support. I don't. Let's see. Our wingers are never healthy. That seems to be that way, yeah, doesn't it? The interesting thing is when we get Kudus and Deki back, I think that Deki is absolutely class, right? And I think he is the model of consistency. And when you look at his, production, once he regains form, I think he actually takes over on the right wing. I think he's pacey. I think he's got a physical presence. But that being said, it's like he's also a very good player. And from the right side, he has a good strike rate. He has a good goal tally, and he's got a good assist tally as well too. And me personally, it's like Deki is going to be one of those guys that are going to have to get in sooner rather than later and take his spot in the starting 11. But that being said, it's like with the idea of having a Gakpo and a Savino off the left, that's going to allow Matisse Tell to go back to his natural position. It's going to allow Mikey Moore to go out on loan, but it creates better depth off that left-hand side as well too. And the idea of having an attacking three that looks like Cody Gakpo off the left, Deki off the right, and Marmouche through the middle with a healthy James Maddison underneath. Now all of a sudden, an attacking liability turns into an attacking strength. And the idea of having, both Mateus Fernandez and Sandro Tonali, and all of a sudden this team looks night and day better. But again, there's a lot of work that still has to happen. So between now and then, so again, today wasn't great, and I don't think that anybody is going to sit here and say that it was. But I'm not going to sit here and say the sky is falling or the same Spurs after one game. We still have 37 more of them, left to play. I firmly believe that Spurs will get into their season, and I also think that this team is going to look absolute night and day better within the next 3 to 4 weeks. As soon as we get our targets in, we get them bedded in and get them into the starting 11, full team training, I think this team is going to look a lot better than it did today. Today was what it was. We got our asses kicked. Let's just call it what it is. But I also saw exactly what De Zerbi was working on. Especially when you have those two in the midfield. This team looked a lot more confident in the second half. So there are small things that you can take away, but I do know that defensively we absolutely need Porto and VDV in this back four. I thought Senesi actually, I don't know, man. I thought Senesi actually played a pretty good game today, but that's going to be quality. But the reality is, this was a match where we didn't necessarily have the first choice option. So we'll see how it plays out. But let's see. Season has officially returned. Spurs getting battered and fans having a meltdown. I'm not necessarily having a meltdown. I'm just trying to be consistent. Like, that's the thing. It's like, when you go through the last couple seasons that we had and dealing with the injury crises that we had, seeing the lack of quality, and on a week-to-week basis trying to maintain consistency emotionally, It got hard, man. It got so very hard. But that's the beautiful part about the start of a new season, right? You have the same opportunity as everybody else, and this team is clearly better than the last two versions we saw under Ange Postecoglou and Thomas Frank. That much is very clear. But it's going to be up to Roberto De Zerbi to make sure that he puts his team in the right positions to succeed. And personally, I think we will. And again, it all comes down to health. Kind of obvious, but it also comes down to consistency, which is something that this team hasn't been able to achieve over the last couple seasons. But I like the quality that's come through, and I think Spurs have gotten a lot better. But it's all about coming together and putting these pieces together so they fit. Let's take a look around the Premier League before I go. This was a kind of a fun weekend as things kicked off. Yesterday, Arsenal, those shitty Gooners in North London, they beat Coventry City 3-0 as Kai Havertz, Bukayo Saka, and Martin Odegaard all scored for Arsenal, and it looked as easy as I thought it was going to look. So I guess congratulations, Arsenal. They get their season started off with a win. Coventry, on the other hand, got absolutely dummied, and of course, they're missing their starting nine in Haji Wright. He's going to be out for a little bit of a spell. But that being said, it's like Coventry didn't do enough in the summer to really kind of strengthen the areas that they needed, so they can at least attempt to consolidate at the Premier League level. And it's going to be a difficult spell for Frank Lampard this year. And who knows if Frankie Boy is going to be there at the end of the season, because this actually could be a very long season for Coventry. Hull City beat Manchester United 2-0. Congratulations to Hull City. The Tigers not only follow up their big win in Wembley last year to come up to the Premier League, but they opened up their campaign with a nice 2-0 victory over Manchester United as Semi Ajay scored in the 17th minute and Noble Mendy. That was actually a good pickup for Hull City, as he also scored in his Hull City debut. So congratulations to the Tigers. That was an absolutely massive win. Ipswich beat Sunderland yesterday 2-1 as Emerson and Jack Clark scored for the Tractor Boys as they beat Sunderland 2-1 as Nilson Anguello scored for Sunderland. Not exactly the greatest start for the Black Cats up there, but that being said, I'm kind of fond of Sunderland. I'm kind of hoping that Sunderland repeats the success of which they had last season. I think their team is going to be strong. I don't think Sunderland's going to be at any risk to go down this year, but again, both Hull City and Ipswich Town getting their season started off the right way. That's kind of nice to see. Everton, the Toffees beat Crystal Palace 2-0 as Keenan Dewsbury Hall scored in the 42nd minute, and Tiano Berry. How about Barry? He scores in the 53rd minute as the Toffees beat Crystal Palace. That's a little bit of a surprise. But that being said, good for Everton. Leeds ruins Oliver Glasner's debut for Forest as congratulations on Leeds as Anton Stott scored in the 88th minute, and Leeds gets 3 points. That's not bad. And of course, Brentford handled their business today as well too. Let's see, tomorrow, Man City will host the Cherries of Bournemouth. Brighton will host Villa, and Newcastle will host Liverpool, and Fulham will host the Cherries. Chelsea. The interesting thing, I guess, before I go, I'm kind of curious about how you guys feel about Chelsea this season. And of course, we have, Chelsea also has, a new manager this season. And of course, former Bayer Leverkusen and Real Madrid head coach Xabi Alonso. And of course, Chelsea is also going through some shit as well too in their ownership group, as it looks like Todd Bowley and his partner, former Laker owner, are looking to sell their 12.5 or 12.8% of their shares. And so there's a lot of transition with Chelsea as well too when it comes to that. But that being said, Chelsea has talent, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly how that's going to work out with Chelsea. Same thing with Liverpool. You get Andoni Iraola through the door as they let go of Arne Slot. Of course, Liverpool is looking to still bring in some talent. But that being said, I would probably assume that Liverpool, is still going to be, in contention this season. Me personally, I hate to say it, I think everybody's chasing Arsenal. But that being said, there are some question marks with some of the bigger teams. Of course, Man City has a new head coach as well too, as Pep exits, and Enzo Maresca comes in. They lose Rodri, and there seems to be some question marks with some of the bigger teams. And like I said earlier, man, we've seen over the course of the last 3 to 4 years that some of these mid-table teams have started to spend a little bit money. When we look at some of their transfer strategies, like a Brighton, like a Bournemouth, Fulham, Everton, we have seen some of these teams kick up a little bit in the table to a point where, historically I'm used to seeing these teams be anywhere between 10th and 15th, right? But that being said, we're also starting to see a lot more movement with these teams. And, of course, a lot of these teams have new ownership groups. Of course, Brighton, you talk about Tony Bloom and some of the things that he does with the analytics. And, of course, Brighton ends up being one of those plug and play type teams, just like Bournemouth as well too. And now all of a sudden, there's not that huge points discrepancy between the top of the table and the mid table in the Premier League. It just feels like now we're in an era of the Premier League where, even getting down to 15th, 16th place, you're playing teams that on any given weekend have the ability to beat everyone. To me personally, I think it makes for a more exciting Premier League. Because there's not going to be just teams where you're looking at it's like, oh, okay, cool, that's going to be an automatic 3 points. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I actually I'm looking forward to the Premier League campaign this year, if I'm being honest. But to wrap up, it looks like we have looks like that is a smiley face for a name. He says, I'm very disappointed. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed myself. This was not the way that I wanted to get off, and it looks like Connor Michael says worst defense I've seen. Yeah, especially in that first half, it wasn't a great performance. It looked like Van Heck and Senesi had some communication issues, and Archie Gray for that first 20-25 minutes. It was like it took time for Gray to get into this match as well too. He was routinely beaten off that right side. It wasn't making anything easy. As a matter of fact, and in that first goal when Keane Lewis Potter scored, you're looking at the back post and you're wondering how Keane Lewis Potter was essentially unmarked and that open in the box, and you see that Archie Gray gave up on it. That was absolutely disappointing. You have to, you can't allow a left back just to be able to waltz into the box unmarked and being able to have those type of looks, right? You can't leave your goalkeeper hanging dry like that. Some people will say, or you might even say that maybe that was Van Hecke's guy to mark. Certainly, he was out of position, but that's Archie Gray completely. That's his man. That's the dude that he's tasked with not allowing home dude just to be able to waltz free into the box. So that whole first 30 minutes of the half, nobody really was playing really all that well defensively. Senesi grew into the game. Van Hecke grew into the game. I even think Robbo and Archie Gray ultimately grew into that game. But that being said, it's going to look completely different when Pedro Porro and Mickey Van de Ven are on the pitch. These guys are rocks. Van de Ven is quietly growing into one of the game's best left center backs, and Pedro Porro obviously coming off a World Cup victory. You know exactly what you're going to get from those guys. And especially attacking wise, one of the biggest things that was disappointing was Archie Gray wasn't overlapping. That was the crazy thing. I mean, we saw on the left all game, right? Where, if Matisse Tell comes a little short to touch the ball, you saw Robbo just off his back shoulder making runs, around the corner to try to get in a position to receive the ball. Archie Gray just was not doing it at all. And Mikey, like there were times where we saw Mikey Moore get a little frustrated right there because he was looking to progress the ball forward, and Archie just wasn't doing it. In the second half, it was a completely different story. I thought Archie kind of grew into that game a little bit, and he certainly was trying to make inverted runs at the very least in that second half. But again, things drastically changed with this team in the second half when we saw Mateus Fernandes come on. James Maddison, I don't know. James Maddison, he's going to need time, man. I think that is 100% what I saw coming off the bench today. It didn't look like he didn't really look like he did much to, I guess you can say, to change the outcome. I thought of the guys that came on in that second half, I think Fernandes certainly was one. I thought Rodrigo Betancourt played a little. I thought Rodrigo actually played pretty well defensively. And, Udoji came on, a little too late, but Matisse Tell going to the right side wasn't really the same. And let's see. And, Dominic Solanke didn't really provide much. Let's see. Did it change that much? Yeah, I think it did. They lost the second half. Yeah, like here's the thing, right? So you're right, though. You're absolutely right in this comment. They gave up that early goal in the second half and it was over. But as this team started progressing in the second half, they also dominated possession. They were able to move the ball with ease through the central parts of the pitch, which is something that they couldn't do in that first half. And they were actually getting dangerous chances in on Brentford. And so from that standpoint, from that, it looked a lot better than what we saw in the first half. Overall, it was just dog shit through and through. Like I don't think we can gloss over that. And I think there's also some truth as well too that Brentford was sitting back. That's true. But that being said, it's you saw in that second half that they were a lot more confident on the ball. And I think a lot of it is because, the idea of starting a guy like Lucas Bergvall. And by the way, I'm not trying to blame Lucas Bergvall for anything. It's like, there's plenty of blame to go around that first half. But that being said, it's like you really needed your first, at least as much as your first choice as you possibly can, because there really is a drop off from a guy like Mateus Fernandes and a guy like Lucas Bergvall. There's quite a big drop off. Right. Let's not mince words. But that being said, coming up for Spurs in this upcoming week, I believe it's going to be on Wednesday. We will have the second round of the League Cup as Spurs will host Charlton Athletic. And that's going to be an interesting matchup in itself. And I think this is going to be the opportunity where we will see a Savinho. If we are able to bring in a guy like Omar Mamouche, I think that also is going to be one of those type of games where you're going to start to bet in some of these new arrivals. And it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that just to get them some minutes, get them familiar with some of their new teammates. That, and also it's an opportunity to progress in the Carabao Cup. And I think that, quite frankly, we should be prioritizing cup runs this year. But then next week we return back to the stadium to host a Newcastle team that, quite frankly, it should be a good opportunity for Spurs in front of their home supporters to get their first win of the season. So let's see. I'm a United fan, so I'm right there with you. Yeah. Let me ask you a question real quick. Against Hull City, I didn't watch the game. I'm going to go back and watch it a little bit later today. But you tell me. I mean, what was the issue with United? Was it just sloppy passing, couldn't get the ball forward, not creating enough chances, or was it Hull City just being able to counterattack? Well, I haven't seen it, so I haven't seen the game yet, so I have no idea. So I'm asking you. Let me know exactly that one. That's kind of a bad way to start your season, losing to Hull City. But I can't really speak. We just got dummied by Brentford. if I was a Spurs fan, I would be worried about big spends on Tonali and Ben Hecka after the game. I'm not going to sit here and think like the sky is falling because we lost today. Again, what would it look like if we actually had Porro, Van de Ven, Fernandez, Madison in the starting 11 to start? I probably would have played out a little bit different. Now, do we still win? We don't know. But when you're starting Connor Gallagher and Lucas Bergvall in your middle, when you're playing Archie Gray off the right back, and you have turns out Senesi was probably one of our best defenders, but when you're essentially playing a couple second choice defenders, it's going to look a little bit different. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but this was when you were looking at the starting 11 this morning, you were wondering where the goals were going to come from, obviously, but also you were kind of wondering whether or not Brighton was going to steamroll our midfield for large stretches, and sure enough, they did in the first half, without a doubt. I actually think Sandro Tonali will be our player of the year. I think Fernandez was a very good signing as well too. And again, but this team is only going to go so far as their ability to score goals, without a doubt. You're not going to be able to kick up the table if you're not scoring goals. So before I go, just to let you guys know what's coming up on the channel. Of course, tomorrow it'll be or on Monday, it will be the return of USMNT Yanks Abroad as we do a recap of all the U.S. men's national team players that apply their trade in Europe. Tomorrow, I will return with Dermatron of THFC Tottenham Till We Die, as we do every single Sunday on our show called It's Football Not Soccer, as we talk about all things football around the world. But I would probably assume we're going to talk a little bit about this one tomorrow. And I think we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the exorbitant amount of money that's being spread around the transfer window, because a lot of, I guess you can say, not upper echelon players absolutely going for huge fees. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about Newcastle and whether or not they're going to get relegated this season. So it's going to be a very good conversation. It will be on my channel, Stateside Footy, tomorrow at 5:00 UK time, noon Eastern United States time. And then, of course, on Monday, we'll have USMNT Yanks Abroad. And then next weekend, of course, we will be back for the Spurs live stream as we will take on Newcastle. And then on Sunday, Billy T will be joining me to talk a little bit about this football team. So we actually have a lot of good content coming your way. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell. And if you guys are watching on TikTok Live, the link is in the description for you guys to head on over. Again, but that being said, if any of you guys want to join the conversation, you guys can always hit me on the DM. I have no problem having those conversations with fans. So if you want to come on the show and have a conversation, I'd be very willing to do that. So you guys have an open invitation, and that goes for everybody on YouTube. And of course, if you're tuning in from X as well too, if you want to have that conversation, I have no problem. This channel is for you guys as well too. So if you want to come on the show, man, hit me up on the DM. I would be happy to have you guys. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for tuning in. Again, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Spurs drop let's just understand they got dummy today. 3-0 to Brentford. Not a good way, especially in a London derby. Not a good way to start the season, but we have an opportunity to rectify that against Charlton Athletic midweek, and of course next week versus Newcastle at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and come on, you Spurs.